This is the Antari Ice 101 fog machine with an onboard chiller. I'll open this, I'm just storing the cords in here. And the screws, because I've taken the panels off to the side. But ice goes down into this chamber. You seal this up and it cools the fog down so it stays lower to the ground. I've had this for about 6 years, maybe a little longer, and it's been pretty reliable. But last Halloween, when I went to fire it up, no smoke would come out. The heater element was heating up, but it wasn't producing any smoke, so I attached a line of compressed air to it at a low pressure just to see if any smoke could be pushed out, and it worked. So I kind of figured it was the pump that was bad. So I bought a new pump, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to exchange the pump and see if I can't get this thing working again. So these pumps are not cheap, even on some of the cheaper fog machines. Depending on how much your fog machine costs, it might be beneficial for you just to replace the entire unit. In this case, the Antari 101 I think still sells for about $700 or $800. So the pump, I want to say, was around $100, but I didn't get it in time for Halloween last year, so I actually had kind of a standby fogger that I used that was a lot smaller than this. And it worked out fine. It just does not put out the volume of fog that this machine does. And I'll demo it in a minute here, if I get it working, that is. So these are the panels. They just come off by taking a few screws out. I took both sides off so I could kind of show you what is going on this particular fogger. So I apologize if the audio is not good because I'm not wearing a mic like I usually do, but this is a new camera, so I guess I'll see how the audio comes out. But there's basically, on this fogger, there's 3 major components that could fail on you. On most foggers, it's only 2. It would be the heating element and the actual pump. So this actually has 3 major elements that could go bad. There's the main pump that pumps the fog, there's the heating element, and then there's this pump, which is a water pump. As the ice melts in the ice chamber, the water collects in a separate little chamber, or actually I think it's down on the bottom actually. And this pump, this line goes into that chamber, and there's a sensor in there, and this pump will start pumping the water out of this hose back here. And you can just, I usually attach a hose, a longer hose to it, and attach it to a bucket, like a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket or something. But that's if you have the switch set to automatic. You can also just do it manually the next day if you don't want to listen to the noise. The pump's a little loud. So let me flip this over and I'll kind of show you the other side, which is where we're going to be working. So this is the heating group, and there's a temperature sensor, temperature fuse, obviously power cords, and then there's this copper tubing right here. This copper tubing goes down to the pump, and this pump draws in the fog fluid from the fog tank and sends it into the heating element, and there's a fan on the back side that is basically sealed, attached to the chamber that the fog goes into, and it pushes that air through that ice chamber and it comes out the front. So this is the pump that I believe has gone bad, so I bought the replacement. So I'm not sure where it connects. I think it connects down here. There's a black and yellow wire that actually comes back here, but I think it actually connects to a circuit board first, and then there's another yellow and black wire that comes back out to here. I'm going to take the pump off first, which actually has 2 bolts from underneath that I have to undo, and then I'll take this panel off so I can see where these wires connect. I might have to clip some of these cable ties in that. So let's get started. There's 2 large screws that hold the pump into place. There's one right here and one you can't see. It's wheels blocking it. I want to pull these out, but before I do that, while the pump is stable, I actually need to disconnect that copper line. So I'll do that first. So when I was testing this to figure out what the problem was, I just detached this and sprayed a little air in here just to see if I would get any fog that would come out, and a little bit came out. And the reason it came out is because there was, you know, obviously residual fluid in here. Obviously I wasn't pulling anything from the pump. So now that that's out of the way, I can take this pump off. I'm using a number 3 screwdriver because these are pretty big bolts on the bottom here. Let's see how big those are. And to disconnect the fog fluid line, it's just you push this red bushing in and you just pull this out. So that is the pump assembly. It's actually pretty heavy duty. Now I'm going to remove this panel so I can actually see where these wires go back into, because I'm hoping that the connector is the same for the new pump. This is the new pump. Now it certainly looks exactly the same. I'm assuming that this connector is right behind here, so hopefully I can just plug it in and that will make life simpler for me. Now I'm just removing these 2 screws back on this back panel, and then this 1 screw right here. It's always nice when they make something where it allows you to access it and make repairs. So I got some better light on here so you can kind of see in here what's going on. But it's actually a pretty complicated circuit board for just being a fogger. But I'm going to see if I can remove this plug. That comes out pretty easy. Alright, black on the left, I'll remember that. And then I'm just going to clip these cable ties very carefully so I don't cut any other wires. And then I'll remove this old wire, put the new wire in, and then I'll secure everything with some new cable ties. I'm going to remove this flange bolt here because I would risk damaging the copper tubing if I wanted to replace the bolts, and these bolts are just fine. So it'll pretty much tell you when you've kind of bottomed out. It'll go from being real easy to turn to really difficult to turn. So I have everything hooked back up. I think it's time to add some fog juice and fire this thing up and see if we fixed it. So this is what that ice chamber looks like. You just fill this with ice. It's all sealed. It's got a little bit of foam inside, probably to give it some sort of heat resistance value. But I fill it all the way to the top, and what happens is that fan forces that hot fog up through this side, goes through the ice, and then down through this side and it comes out the front of the unit. So I'm not going to put any ice in it because I don't need to. I just need to make sure that it's working. But you do want to seal this, otherwise it will not come. It'll just come out everywhere if you don't have this sealed. And another thing I did is this little, it's probably a brass filter, was all clogged up. I'll show you, I took a shot of the video before I emptied out the vinegar, but I just soaked it in some vinegar overnight, cleaned out the hose real good, cleaned up the tank real good. I don't store this outside or anything. I usually store it either in a storage unit, or now that we just got our new house, we have a big storage building out back. So it's not like it was in the elements or anything. I think sometimes these things can just run out their useful life. And in this case, this pump lasted about 6 years. So I'm going to fire this thing up. So this is what the remote looks like. There's 3 buttons down below. One's for the timer on and off. One is for continuous output, and then one is manual. You have an output control here, volume control. You have an interval control, and then you have duration control. On the continuous button, I could fill up this whole tank back here. And usually what I do is I do about half of the output. I just keep that white line right in the middle there. And it will just pump fog out the entire night. It'll last about 4 hours if memory serves. This is the type of fog fluid I'm using. Every fog machine company is going to tell you to use their fog. So Antari says use Antari fog. It's not really abundant. You can't really find it anywhere but online, at least I couldn't. And then of course there's the brand name Froggy's Fog, which makes all kinds of different fogs. And I have to say, having been home haunting for the better part of 15 years now, I've tried every fog out there. Nothing compares to Froggy's Fog. And you're only going to spend a few more dollars on it. There is a difference. Not all fog is created equal. They have all kinds of different kinds, and I've used probably 3 different ones. This one's called Bog Fog, so it's really thick and it's low, hangs really low to the ground. There's another one called Fast Dissipating Fog or something like that that I use in the geyser prop, and I'll cut to a clip right now to show you what that looks like. When I first bought it online, the Fast Dissipating Fog, I was like, yeah, right, it's probably just like every other fog. It really does dissipate really quickly, which is impressive. This year I'm going to do an entirely different theme though, kind of a scratch-built theme. I don't even think I'm going to have any props that I've used in the past in this year's hunt. But I'll do a video about the planning for that coming up shortly. Less than 100 days left before Halloween. So I want to make sure I have all of my fog machines and other equipment that I am going to be using in good working order. So this year I'm actually going to be doing using some lasers. And so I need kind of a haze effect. Well, they do make fog for that too. It's called phase haze or something like that. I think Froggy's Fog has a version of that one. The only tricky thing is they actually make special foggers, hazing foggers. I think the only difference is they actually have a fan that kind of blows the fog up so that you get this haze in the room. I just don't know how necessary that's going to be, so I'm going to actually do some tests with this. I may want this for low-lying fog for maybe the yard or something, but I have other foggers, so I just want to get some haze type fog, because I do believe that does make a difference. If I get the right fog and just maybe use a regular fog machine, maybe mounted on the ceiling or something, I won't have to buy a specialty fogger. But if you have any insight on phase foggers or haze phase foggers, you're a DJ or anything like that, or if you used them for your Halloween haunt, leave a comment down below and let everybody know what direction we should go if you're looking for a hazy effect. Alright, so the light is green. I'm going to see if this works. And we have fog. Alright, so as I mentioned, I want to use lasers this year, and the reason I'm going to do this is because it creates a special effect where you can't really see beyond or below the laser, depending on where they are, if you mix it with fog. So I'll do another video where I explain why I'm using the lasers, how they work, which lasers you should buy, where you should buy them, how much they cost. And this year I'm doing a swamp or haunted bayou theme. So stay tuned for more content and more information about that.